made for left-handed people. Seems like the clip's on the wrong side. Reading from Srimad Prabhupada, Lilamrita, Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds. This is between 1975 and 1977. And this chapter is still entitled, Please Distribute Books. The quickest way to catch Krishna's attention, Srila Prabhupada says, was to direct another person to Krishna consciousness. The book distributors, therefore, felt a great reciprocation with their spiritual master, and this impelled them to go on serving and distributing. Sanjaya speaking. Philosophically, we saw that going out and distributing books was what our spiritual master wanted us to do. We knew that was clear to us. We also had a real sense of idealism, that these books and magazines would change the world. Once you come to Krishna consciousness, you actually see how crummy the material world is, how really contaminated things are, how envious people are, and how horrible material life is. You can see that. You don't feel that you yourself can change it, but you feel that whoever gets one of Prabhupada's books and looks at it will be changed in a spiritual way. There was no question about it. We also felt a big change would come in the world in the future as Krishna consciousness spread. Prabhupada also said that if people just touch one of these books, their lives will change. Our faith was in the books and Srila Prabhupada. And Sanjay was actually one of the biggest book distributors at that time. And it's the fact that these books can change the world. They change the world for us as individuals, and it can change the world for every other individual who takes to them. Srila Prabhupada ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 4, entitled The Characteristics of Rishabdev, Text 4. Just do this verse myself. Vyadesha Kalavaya Shraddhartrig Viva Dode Shopachitai Sarvair Api Kratubir Yato Padesham Shata Kridva Iya Iyaja Dravya. The ingredients for performing yajna. Desha, the particular place, a holy place or a temple. Kala, the suitable times such as springtime. Vaya, the age, especially youth. Shraddha, faith in goodness, not in passion and ignorance. Ritvik, the priests. Vivida Udesha, worshipping different demigods for different purposes. Pachitai, enriched by. Sarvai, all kinds of. Happy, certainly. Kratubi, by sacrificial ceremonies. Yata Upadesham, according to the instruction. Shatakridva, 100 times. Yaja, he worshipped. Translation: Lord Rishabdev performed all kinds of sacrifices 100 times according to the instructions of the Vedic literatures. Thus he satisfied Lord Vishnu in every respect. All the rituals were enriched by first-class ingredients. They were executed in holy places according to the proper time by priests who were all young and faithful. In this way, Lord Vishnu was worshipped and prasad was offered to all the demigods. Thus, the functions and festivals were all successful. Please repeat. Lord Rishabdev performed all kinds of sacrifices, 100 times according to the instructions of the Vedic literatures. Thus he satisfied Lord Vishnu in every respect. All the rituals were enriched by first-class ingredients. They were executed in holy places, according to the proper time, by priests who were all young and faithful. In this way, Lord Vishnu was worshipped, and the prasad was offered to all the demigods. Thus, the functions and festivals were all successful. Srila Prabhupada's purport. It is said, Kumara acharit pragyo dharman Bhagavatam iha, from Bhagavatam 761. A ritual should be performed by young men, even boys at a tender age, in order for the ritual to be performed successfully. From childhood, people should be trained in Vedic culture, especially in devotional service. In this way, one can perfect one's life. A Vaishnava does not disrespect the demigods, but on the other hand, he is not so foolish that he accepts each and every demigod as the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is master of all demigods, therefore the demigods are his servants. The Vaishnava accepts them as servants of the Supreme Lord and he worships them directly. In the Brahma Samhita, the important demigods, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and even the incarnations and expansions of Lord Krishna, like Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and all the other Vishnu tattvas, as well as the Shakti tattvas like Durga Devi, are all worshipped by the process of worshipping Govinda, with the words Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. A Vaishnava worships the demigods in relation to Govinda, not independently. The Vaishnavas are not so foolish that they consider the demigods independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arasabha Britya. The Supreme Master is Krishna, and all others are his servants. Om Agyanata Manandasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chakshurumatamina Tasma Shri Maha Vakam Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Lagate Garam Yatkripa Tamam Vande Shigam Jinatarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Rishabdev performed all kinds of sacrifices 100 times according to the instructions of the Vedic literatures. Thus he satisfied Lord Vishnu in every respect. All the rituals were enriched by first-class ingredients. They were executed in holy places according to the proper time by priests who were all young and faithful. In this way, Lord Vishnu was worshipped and the prasad was offered to all the demigods. Thus the functions and festivals were all successful. So he achieved success because he did according to the instructions of the Vedic literatures. And Prabhupada gives that example. If we want to know how the microphone works, then we use the instructions which come with it. So the instructions which come with the material world are Bhagavad Gita. If we understand Bhagavad Gita, and we're not going to fully come to the extent of the understanding of Bhagavad Gita because it's unfathomable. But Krishna reveals as we perform devotional service, Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pritipurvakam Dadami Buddha Yogam Tam Yenamama Priyantite. To those who are constantly devoted to worshipping me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. So constantly devoted means that at all times we're trying to fit Krishna into our lives so we're always remembering him, and that whatever we're doing is related to Krishna. And for it to be related to Krishna, if we have any doubt about that, then the simple way to eradicate that doubt is ask yourself, is what I'm doing authorized? If it's authorized, if it's been given, then it's connected. If we're doing something else which isn't authorized, then there's a good chance it's actually not going to be connected. So, therefore, because here it's mentioning about the following the Vedic instructions. So if we're worshipping demigods, for example, and we're simply worshipping for material gain, then we can't consider that devotional service. On a higher level, you may say, okay, the gopis worshipped Katyayani so they could have Krishna as their husband, but that was also devotional service. Their motivation was to be with Krishna. It wasn't that they were doing something so they could enjoy separately from Krishna. And this is the whole crux of it. Are we trying to enjoy separately from Krishna? Are we going to use the material world to enjoy separately from Krishna? Use any facility in the material world, including worship of demigods? Are we going to do that? Or are we going to do everything in relation to Krishna? Prabhupada mentions that a Vaishnava is not disrespectful to the demigods. So it's not that we go, oh, well, we don't worship the demigods, so we don't have to offer them any respect. No, that's not the case. We offer respect. Because they're also devotees. And Lord Shiva, he's considered Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. He is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. And sometimes we'll see in Krishna book there are examples where the demigods forget Krishna also. Like this weekend, we're going to be celebrating Govardhan Puja this Sunday. And that pastime highlights that Indra forgot who Krishna was. He forgot the supremacy of Krishna. So just when all the paraphernalia has been assembled for Indra Yajna, then Krishna convinced everybody, don't offer it to Indra, just use this for worshipping Govardhan Hill, because we get everything from Govardhan Hill, so we don't need to worship Indra. So Krishna is very convincing. Krishna is the kind of person that could convince you that black is white or white is black. So his logic and his powers of arguing are undefeatable. So he convinced everyone to do this, and Indra took offense. He's thinking, who's this little upstart? I'll punish him, and I'll punish all the residents of Vrindavan. So he was acting like a bit of a hoodlum, actually. Just like sometimes you get these gangsters, they will not just, if you cross their path, then they don't just threaten you, but they threaten your whole family. Or you get some despot who will do like that. So he was, his anger couldn't be checked. And because he was so proud, actually, and he was attached to getting his offerings, then he felt like he had been disrespected. But this was Krishna's mercy upon Indra to help him remember what his position is. And it was successful, of course. Whatever venture Krishna is involved in, it becomes successful. So he brought Indra round to remembering that he was actually eternal servant of Krishna. And Indra was very remorseful, and he was very humble in his apology, and he knew how to please Krishna. When at the end of it all, then he was bathing Krishna and the milk from the Surabhi cow, because he knew that the cows are very dear to Krishna. And Krishna is so kind that he forgave him, even though he was trying to create so much havoc. Because of Krishna's supremacy, he couldn't do anything. Sometimes we experience some heavy rainfall or wind, thunder and lightning, things like this. And even at our worst, it wouldn't be anything compared to what Indra was showering upon the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Actually, in South Africa, sometimes you'll see advertised hail-damaged cars. So they have hailstones in South Africa, which are like golf balls. And when the hailstones come, you have to run for cover. Sometimes people lose their life in it, or if you get you can get severely injured. But this is nothing in comparison to what Indra was showering upon the inhabitants of Vrindavan. But Krishna didn't hold it against him. He didn't punish him. When Indra came to his senses and he'd offered his obeisances to Krishna and he sought forgiveness, then he forgave him. So such is the glory of Krishna. So if we think, oh, I'm so fallen, I can't be saved, then this is just Maya. We cannot think like that. It's not true. And especially in Kali Yuga, where Krishna appeared as Lord Chaitanya, the most merciful incarnation, and he simply gave us this instruction to chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind. So, with this verse, Trinadapi Snechana, Tarorapi Sahasnana Amani Namanadena Kirtnir Sadahari, then this is our main protection against the ill effects of Kali Yuga. And such a state of mind attracts the Lord. Even though Krishna is all attractive, then he's attracted by the devotee's humility. He's pleased by that. And the devotee's ability to serve alongside other devotees. And mostly, Krishna is pleased when we try to bring others to him. Even sometimes we might feel like we're unqualified to preach or to share our Krishna consciousness. We think, oh, I don't really know much, so I shouldn't really speak. But whatever you know, Prabhupada says, whatever you know, just share it with others. And we must know something. Even the person who's read the first line, they know something. If they accept it, then they know it. So the important thing is, if our service is authorized, within that authorized service, then we're given a certain amount of freedom to use our initiative or to try to practice devotional service according to the directions we've read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Instruction, etc. So therefore, we have to do a regular program of reading. If we're reading every day, then the various challenges and doubts and obstacles which we come across through reading Prabhupada's books and through associating with devotees, we'll be able to understand how to overcome them. If we think we can do it without these things, then we're certainly going to meet with frustration and without success. So success is there when we take advantage of the association of devotees, not that we just happen to physically be around where the deities are, or physically be in the vicinity of devotees, but taking advantage of the association of devotees means to serve from the moment we get up, from the moment our eyes open in the morning to the moment we close at night. Then we want to be engaged in devotional service. Otherwise, Kali Yuga will come into our mind, Kali Yuga will come into our life, Maya will take our mind away. He explains this in Bhagavad Gita that if even one of the roaming senses fixed on a sense object can take away one of steady intelligence. So we can't be lackadaisical, we have to be vigilant to protect our devotional service. So it's a mistake to think that Krishna consciousness is some kind of social enterprise, some kind of social club. There is a society there, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that is ISKCON. If we are associating in such a way that we are engaging in Krishna consciousness and it's in an authorized fashion, then that is assured success 100%. So Krishna, he tells us in Bhagavad Gita, keep all abominable activities far distant by performing devotional service. So in Kali Yuga, it's not difficult to fall into abominable activities because that is the norm in Kali Yuga. Nobody will notice. If you're in the association of devotees, if you do something crazy, like you just see you walk into the temple and you're smoking a big joint, and you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend around your arm, and you start kissing in front of the deities, everyone will be thinking, what the heck's this? Get out. But if you walk down the high street doing that, then nobody's going to blink because they're all doing it. So the society of devotees is such that we may become aware of our shortcomings, we may become aware of our impurities, and sometimes we may even feel disgusted or ashamed, but that's okay to some degree, but don't let it hold us back. We don't meditate on these things, we meditate on the positive side, which is the alternative to these things, which is devotional service. And devotional service begins with controlling the tongue through chanting and through taking prasad, and everything else will come from that. So this chanting also refers to reading. It's hearing. First is hearing and then chanting. Hearing means reading. Hearing means attending classes. Hearing means inquiring from other devotees. It doesn't matter how advanced we get, we should never assume that we're safe in this material world. We should never assume that we've made it. We may feel safe because Krishna will give that protection, but we shouldn't become inattentive due to that feeling of security. Otherwise, we may find ourselves trying to find some security in the material world, which is, as we explained before, is taking shelter of the tail of the dog. The dog is swimming in the ocean, and we're also trying to swim in the ocean. The dog is swimming better than us, so we grab the dog's tail and it turns around and bites us. This is taking shelter of Maya, that we think, oh, these people are enjoying, let me enjoy too. We try to enjoy and then we suffer. So this is the nature of illusion. Maya is not called Maya just because it's like a cool name for her. It means illusion. We take something to be the reality when it's not. We think that we're going to enjoy, but actually we're going to suffer. Either we suffer, according to the different modes we try to enjoy in, then we either suffer directly by our type of enjoyment, like some people, for example, unfortunately, they may inject drugs into their body, and they're suffering as soon as they do that because they're creating a dependency. Or any other type of intoxication, they may think it's enjoyment, but they create a dependency which leads to misery, and they have to be in that condition all the time. Or else they have to try to regulate it. But if you don't touch it in the first place, you don't have to regulate it. So the material world is full of various traps to let us think we're going to enjoy. And there may be some small enjoyment there, but there's a price to pay. And Krishna gives all the instructions in Bhagavad Gita how we can still enjoy within this material world, but yet be free from entanglement in it. So he explains that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Karma bandhana. So people are familiar with this word karma, and it's explained in many different ways. In this respect, it means that our activities are going to bind us if our work is not done for Yogyavaya Vishnu, to please Vishnu as a sacrifice. So sacrifice doesn't necessarily mean to be something very difficult. Some sacrifices are very easy, such as Yad Kroshi Yadashnasi, that everything we do, everything we offer, give away, all that we eat, should be done as an offering to Krishna. So that frees us from reactions to the material world. Prabhupada said, if you like to eat nice food stuff, then just cook nice food stuff and offer it to Krishna. So we don't have to become ascetics in the sense that we don't have to be very austere. Austerities come in life no matter what you are anyway. Even the most wealthy person on the planet can still be prone to toothache or some other kind of disease. Everyone is prone to Janma, Mrityu, Jara and Vyadi, birth, death, old age and disease. And nothing can prevent these things from taking place. One time Prabhupada was arguing with, or one visitor was arguing with Prabhupada that in the medical world they've made so much advancement. They're curing this disease and curing that disease. Prabhupada says, yes, but can they cure disease? So they cure one disease, but then something else comes because karma is going to bring it one way or another. We can't avoid it. Just like you may get in debt and you think, oh, let me just, we call it a moonie or a moonlight flitting. It means that they might leave. So there's so many debts coming in the letterbox and the person thinks, I can't deal with this. Yeah, she should go in time. So let me just move house to another place, to another city. So they may move house to another city, but then the debt collectors find them again. And then they start coming back in again. The debt is to be collected yet again. Now, and as they try to avoid the debt, then they simply increase more and more. So similarly, if we just accept that we have a debt, we have a karmic debt, we've done some things in the material world, which is going to bring about some reaction. We can accept that debt and not try to avoid it by creating more debt, by getting more involved in the material world of false sense enjoyment. And if we accept that, Lord Brahma explains that if a devotee tolerantly undergoes the reactions of their past deeds, whatever good and bad comes, they just tolerate that without becoming enamored by it or without becoming disturbed by it, then their rightful inheritance is pure devotional service. All that will be left is devotional service. In due course of time, all the reactions are burnt to ashes. So when we get some bad karmic reaction in the form of some type of suffering or misfortune, then we have to tolerate that and continue with our devotional service, continue with our chanting, etc. And when we get some good reaction, that perhaps we come into some good luck in some way or another, then we also have to tolerate that, because Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Parata Chetasam Vyavaya Sayatmika Budir Ikeha Kurunandana. Is that right? The last word, the last line, Ikeha Kurunandana. So Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam. So those whose minds are attracted by Bhoga, enjoyment, and Aishwarya, material opulence, Ekeha Kurunandana, then that Ekeha, or single-pointed determination to serve Krishna, doesn't take place. So therefore we have to tolerate good reactions as well. Say, for example, a family member leaves you a big inheritance, you might think, now I can enjoy. Now I can just make a comfortable situation for myself, put my feet up, I'll read a bit of Gita now and again, and I don't have to work, I don't have to do anything. Then that could actually be a cause of misfortune for a devotee, because they would lose a devotional service. So then the thing is, how do we engage this in devotional service? If we come into some good fortune, if someone becomes famous, then how to use that fame for Krishna? Someone becomes wealthy, or someone has very good intellectual ability. So whatever we have, if we use that in Krishna's service, then that's a source of liberation, not a source of bondage. So that is the art of devotional service, that whatever we have, try to use it for Krishna. And if we can't use it for Krishna, best we don't use it. Or we engage someone else's intelligence to show us how to. So the Bhagavad Gita is not simply an intellectual study. We can study it intellectually, we can study it academically, but it's a book which has to be lived. And when we live the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, then certainly it comes to life. And then we see that this is the wonder of Bhagavad Gita, is just the wonder of Krishna, that we can never fully know Krishna, as he's eternally youthful. He's ever expanding. But that doesn't stop us from being completely amazed and intrigued by this ever-increasing revelation of Krishna's greatness. So Prabhupada made this comment that sometimes people say God is great, but do they understand how great is God, or in what ways is God great? So when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we read Bhagavad Gita, Opulence to Absolute, etc., then we can get a little glimpse into how great Krishna is. And at the end of it all, Krishna says, but what need is there for all this detailed knowledge when simply by a single fragment of myself I pervade and support this entire universe? Not just actually universe, or the whole cosmic manifestation. So one small portion of Krishna is Mahavishnu, and everything is in this material cosmic manifestation is dependent on Mahavishnu, and that's simply from a spark of his splendor. So this is what we're heading towards as a devotee, performing devotional service, chanting the holy names, always striving to be Krishna conscious. Then this is what our inheritance is to associate with that person whose spark of his splendor is maintaining the whole cosmic manifestation. So we cannot fathom that, but at least we try to understand, and Krishna gives the understanding by our constant devotion. And as long as we engage in devotional service according to the regulative principles and according to the directions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then we're assured success. So therefore here we're seeing this is the lesson here, that because he executed according to the proper time, in place and circumstance, and according to the instruction of Vedic literature, he didn't show any, he wasn't ignorant or disrespectful to the demigods or other persons. So this is another lesson, is that there's an offense called Maryada Vyatikrama, which means that to take the honor or praise which is actually meant for someone else, because we like to get recognized, then sometimes we can fall into this. Someone says, oh, that was very nice, you did very well. And we forget that everything which we are is by the mercy of Guru and Krishna and the Vaishnavas, but we're quite happy sometimes to take the praise because it gives us some kind of feeling of importance. But we see Prabhupada gave this example by his own life example, that he didn't take any praise for himself. He deflected it. This is the qualification of a humble person, truly humble, is that they'll deflect praise to others. Prabhupada would deflect it to his spiritual master or deflect it to his disciples. He wouldn't accept it himself. So if we could try to practice that, then it's actually a more peaceful state of mind. If we're anxious to get recognition and praise, then we'll become easily offended. We think that we're not being noticed. And our motivation is wrong in the first place, that we're doing this so that we can be recognized in some kind of material way. So as we're performing a devotional service, then Krishna is recognizing what we're doing. He's within the heart. Nothing escapes him. And we know that because we become satisfied. When we feel satisfied in our service, then we can be sure that Krishna is recognizing our service. So we'll just stop there. Does anyone get any questions or comments? Okay. Strong Guru Vinda ki. Sri Prabhupada ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Too late, I closed the book.
That's from Kieran. How do they strike the perfect balance between having a sharing evangelical spirit and cultivating the lifestyle attribute of silence?
A very good question. This is an ongoing question, Kieran. Thank you for that. It's an ongoing question that devotees are still trying to figure out. So, a few things we have to take into consideration is Desha Kalapatra, time, place, and circumstance. And this means that we have to consider, is the person going to become more favourable by us sharing Krishna consciousness or less favourable? So that's the first thing we have to consider. And sometimes the way to bring people to Krishna consciousness and share our Krishna consciousness is just to be a friend with them. If we feel that by sharing them some teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, etc., that it might cause them to become offensive, argumentative, or whatever, and we cannot defeat that, then we have to just hold back on it. That's when we can be silent. So, of course, silence for a devotee doesn't mean to say that they say nothing, because even sometimes Prabhupada would appear to be just exchanging mundane pleasantries with people. If Prabhupada was on our morning walk, sometimes people would say good morning to him and Prabhupada would respond, and then he would tell the devotees that this person's devotional service has begun because they're being friendly to the devotees. There's one time they had just got I think it was the Detroit Fisher Mansion, and the next door neighbour, the devotees being devotees, would have loud kirtans and, especially in those days in the early 70s, going around dressed in dhoti, tilak, sari, shaved head, all these things. It wasn't very well known. It was very strange. So they created some kind of disturbance with the local neighbours. But Prabhupada, he personally went to the old people next door and he was just chatting with them. And they were just talking about their teeth and eating sweets. Prabhupada says, I still have all my own teeth. I like sweets as well. And then the person was saying that they had dentures, falses. So Prabhupada was just like making mundane chit-chat with them and being friendly with them. And this is devotion service too, because then the person was no longer inimical to the devotees. So sometimes this is the best way to act, to make people favourable, is just to be friendly with them. And other times, if they have some inquiry, then we can share Krishna consciousness with them. These days, we're trying to avoid this term preaching, so it's good that you mentioned the word share, because this word preaching is taken from the word prachar, and prachar means that our Krishna consciousness personally is not just full to the brim, but it's overflowing. So we're taking Krishna consciousness in so much that it's actually just overflowing anyway. So the best way to share Krishna consciousness is to induce it ourselves. So by reading and chanting, attending lectures, and somehow or another doing some kind of devotional service, if we can, either offer the results of our work to Krishna, if we can't do directly work for Krishna. And this way we can maintain some connection with what we're doing to Krishna consciousness. So by being a good example, because sometimes we have to be a bit patient as well. I've personally noticed that on occasion where I found it wasn't so conducive to directly preach to somebody, that either they would become more inimical, or they take offence, or they become more demoniac, like that. Sometimes that's what happens, is people just go the opposite way, just to, for want of a better expression, stick it to you. They might do like that. So on these occasions, it's best that we don't say. There's that old saying in the Bible, don't cast pearls before swine, because if you show some pigs pearls, they'll just think, oh, if I can't eat it, it's no use to me. So we have to be considering as to what we give to them. The other example is to feed a snake milk increases its venom. So if someone is already inimical, then we don't make them more inimical by trying to tell them about Krishna consciousness. But to be patient and just live a good example ourselves, then in due course of time, that I've noticed also that many people who try to preach to, as time goes on, they will actually start to come to inquire, because we've come to understand Krishna consciousness and accept it because we went through various trials and tribulations and steps, likely over many lifetimes. And because we've come to accept it, and fairly young in our life, it may take these other people, even though they're our friends, we think, oh, the same as me, we went to school together, we go to work together, we've got the same interests, etc. We think, well, I accept it, why can't they accept it? I'll just tell them, and then we realise they don't accept it. We discover that because they haven't really arrived at the same conclusion. Their journey is perhaps on a different stage. So therefore we have to be patient with them. And when we're patient, something I did experience also is it may be years later that people actually come to inquire, or they come to accept the little aspects of Krishna consciousness which gives us an opening to introduce Krishna consciousness. So practice makes perfect as well. So as we practice, if we find that somebody is a little bit interested, or we think they might be, then we can test the water a little bit, say something which is maybe easily acceptable. The more we hear about Prabhupada, personally speaking, I've found that if you listen to Prabhupada's morning walks and his room conversations, you see how Prabhupada takes the Shastra into a live situation, and how he handles people, how he presents Krishna consciousness. Then it can give you a lot of confidence to present it in such a way, or in many different ways. So, for example, if someone doesn't even believe in God, then Prabhupada says, don't try to convince them, just try to convince them what is the soul. So the soul is considered to be the sample of God. It's the same in nature. So if we can get people to understand they're not the body, first of all, that they're a spiritual being, then that's a good start. So a little step by step, then we can increase their ability to accept higher knowledge. Also to be aware of the evils of the material world, or to be aware of the shortcomings of the material world, then that's not so difficult because people are experiencing that. So if we can relate our experiences to their experiences and showing how we're dealing with rising above these negative experiences in the world, so comparing our own journey as well. And most of all, if we're compassionate, if we're a well-wisher of the people, and then we can pray to Krishna, how can I help this person? Because we, with our whatever intelligence we have, we may try our best to do something to help somebody. It may be people in general, it may be many people, it may be a single person we're focusing on. And if we find that we're struggling with that, then just pray to Krishna to give us understanding. What can I say or do to make this person more favourable? But ultimately we have to understand that if the person is not taking the bait, and if they're not advancing or benefiting, then we should just leave it and go to someone else. We shouldn't be too particularly attached. And with regards to relatives, if it's relatives that we're wanting to benefit with Krishna consciousness, if they're not so favourable, then the best thing to do is just become a devotee yourself. And that guarantees their liberation anyway. Krishna mentions that in various places. In Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj is given the benediction 14 generations before and after will be liberated by his devotional service. So if we have some concern for the well-being of our friends and relatives, and we know Krishna consciousness is the answer, then we do our best to try to make it available for them. Sometimes we might find a book which they would like. It could be higher taste, or it could be some scientific approach, or there's many different books there. So the more we learn about Krishna consciousness, and the more we see other expert devotees, how they handle situations, then the more we can do that ourselves. Okay, we'll just, is that okay? Anything else?
Yeah, a question, or maybe ask for clarification. Then they're saying that Krishna consciousness movement is not a social enterprise. So I wonder whether you're referring more to the like a mundane socializing, because they seem to be a kind of Krishna conscious socializing, like practicing Slavic exchanges, and in the spiritual world, they seem to be you look in Krishna book, they seem to be like a Krishna conscious social life. And also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it does say that Paramahamsa can neglect his social needs, but unless you are Paramahamsa, you do have a social needs that can be expressed in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you feel dissatisfied, and Paramahamsa, he can neglect it because he is experiencing a relationship with Krishna. He's not exactly living anymore in the material world, but he's got this relationship with Guru and Krishna, and in that way his need is fulfilled, so he doesn't need anything else. Like Prabhupada was alone in the United States, said, there's 10,000 miles around me with not a single Vaishnava, but I'm happy because I feel my presence of Guru. Just wanted to...
Yeah, thanks, Raghunath. Yeah, when I mentioned that ISKCON is not just some kind of social enterprise, I didn't explain it maybe clearly enough, but it is a society of devotees. So, and Raghunath was also mentioning that unless you're a Paramahamsa, who's not so required to be part in any kind of social formalities, and it's certainly very dangerous to prematurely think that we're a Paramahamsa and we don't have to be social with people. People would just, especially in a preaching movement, people would just consider us to be rude or weird or eccentric or something like that. And we see the example of Prabhupada. He wasn't any of those things, even though he was a Paramahamsa. He was unaffected. He could travel the globe, be on his own, be completely self-satisfied, be unaffected by the world around him. We're not like that. We do require the association of devotees. But the point I was making is that it shouldn't be some kind of mundane thing. It's not that we get together and we just go, oh yeah, I used to be a rascal like this. Oh yeah, I was also such a rascal. Yeah, and I used to listen to this music, and we used to do headbanging, or I used to take this drug. Oh, did you? Yeah, I like this flavor of this drug, and that's not association of devotees. That's called prajalpa. Is another name for it as well? Gramya Katha, village talk. But it's called, Krishna has his Rasa Leela, and we've got our Rascal Leela. So this is going down memory lane to Rascal Leela. And we think we've got a nice association with a devotee because we've just been talking a load of Maya. Oh yeah, we were in the same Maya. So you join a little Maya club in the association of devotees. So that's not ISKCON. It's not that you come to the temple and then you discover, that, oh yeah, you used to smoke hash. Yeah, me too. In fact, I know somebody down the road that sells it, and then you get back to your old ways again. It can happen. It happens. Maya's there. She can sneak in anywhere. It's not that, as soon as you cross over the line at Krunabhavan, then everyone's floating around in bliss, and there's no chance that Maya can get in. And the whole material world is built on forgetting Krishna. So the society of devotees is to help us remember Krishna, and as Raghunath pointed out, the 6 loving exchanges are there. And this means the society of devotees, giving and receiving gifts, accepting given prasad, inquiring confidentially, revealing one's mind. These are the exchanges of the society of devotees. And performing devotional service in the society of devotees, this is how to take advantage of the association of devotees. As I was mentioning earlier, it's not just that we physically enter into the locality of where some devotees live, That doesn't mean anything. Like Prabhupada gives the example that to be physically close to the spiritual master doesn't determine your spiritual advancement. A fly might land on the spiritual master's hand, but it's not that he's becoming advanced in devotion service. Well, he will, because he's touched by the hand of a pure devotee, but it's not that he's sitting there listening, approaching spiritual master for instructions and take those instructions and benefiting from them. He just happens to be have landed on it. So sometimes you might think, well, actually, I'm one of those flies. And that's fine. If you realize that you're one of those flies, that's the beginning of self-realization for you. Now we can make that association even better. So one disciple, he said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I just want to be situated at your feet eternally. And Prabhupada said, that will be very difficult because my feet are always moving. So he wouldn't allow him just to come and rest and, what you say, bask in the sunshine of the spiritual master's glory. To get the spiritual master's attention, you have to be doing something. Anything else?
Kiran says, thank you, Prabhu. Kat is appreciating this rascal Lila expression. She's laughing.
That's it. So there's different ways also with our japa. It can be with our association, but it can also be in our japa. The different types of japa, I'll just quickly go over them. So we're supposed to just be chanting the holy name and hearing it. Not that we're chanting japa and we're going, and the mind's going down memory lane. That's memory lane japa. Or we do dive bomb japa, where we're supposed to be chanting, we're just going like that. And then there's radar japa, we're chanting radar japa, whereas the words are coming out, but we're like, yeah, that needs fixed, and what's that? Just put this over here. We're just being distracted all the time. So that's there with our japa, and if we can avoid those things and simply keep on endeavouring to hear in our japa, then everything else will also benefit from that. Our reading will become attentive, our association will become attentive and more enriched. So it's all coming from good japa. And that's the main thing. And Prabhupada says the most important principle of all the regulative principles is to chant the holy name. So if we're chanting 16 rounds a day, that's your most, especially if you're taking that vow, that's the most important thing. If you haven't chanted all your rounds and some idiot temple president comes along to you and says, get that done, you say, oh, Prabhu, I haven't chanted my rounds. Okay, you better chant your rounds first. Unless you've just been neglectful, and then you might get a telling off. So similarly, if we're chanting 4 rounds a day, 2 rounds a day, then that's the most important thing of our day. If we make that the most important thing, that we don't go below that 2 rounds, 1 round, 4, 8, whatever it is, then from there we'll build up on it. And if we make the holy name the most important thing, then that will save us from entering back into Rascal Leela. It's going Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari.